let's talk about Canada. We've been covering the UK. We're going to talk about Portugal. We've been talking about the United States. Now we're going to talk about the shady business dealings and shady finances of our friends to the north in Canada and Mark Carney. What is Mark Carney doing? How are his finances coming under scrutiny, and his, all of his sort of shady business dealings that has been spotlighted for quite a while? Our journalist friend David Clayton from Clayton's Right is joining us from Ottawa, Canada today. Hey, David, welcome back to the show. Good to see you. So what is going on with Mark Carney? You've been watching this. It's not gotten as much attention in the mainstream media, but you've been on this story, thankfully. What have you found?
Well, Mark Carney, of course, was appointed as prime minister before he was elected as prime minister, with the help, we have to add, of Donald Trump. But he said he had 6 months to reveal his financial assets. And people kept saying, well, how much do you own? Where do you have it? So finally, last week, the time ran out. The clock ran out on the time he had legally as Canada's prime minister to announce how much money he actually owns. And it's not actually a dollar figure, but 103 different corporations of conflicts of interest. Mark Carney has his money invested in 103 different Canadian companies. Plus, he's invested 500 companies that are U.S. and international. So you put this all together and you say, how can a prime minister possibly govern the country with that many conflicts of interest? And it's finally resonating, believe it or not, after all this time and after so many people, well, so few people, myself included. And yes, the Conservative Party of Canada talked about this as well, but not enough during the election campaign. How does a guy with 103 companies under his belt govern the country? And the kicker here, Clayton and Natali, is that the ethics commissioner, and this is just basically advice. This is not legal standing. This is just basically advice to the prime minister, that he can self-regulate. He can put a screen before himself and these companies that is composed of his closest advisors. So, I mean, it's hard to believe, because this would never happen in the United States, which still has some semblance of order where these things are concerned. So Mark Carney's chief of staff is going to serve as the guy screening whether or not he can make a decision. And the ethics commissioner has basically said, you can self-regulate, Mark Carney. If you feel you're not in a good position to rule on a particular project, then you can make that call yourself. If you feel it's okay, that you're in the right frame of mind, go right ahead. And this is incredible, because just before these tools, these goofs, took off the summer from Parliament, they're off right now until they come back sometime in September. They passed a bill that gave Mark Carney complete control over project management in this country. So Mark Carney makes all the decisions, all the calls about major government projects, and every government project. And the Conservative Party of Canada was stupid enough to pass that, because they said, well, at least it's going to get some movement in the country. Yeah, it's going to get movement towards cash, towards Mark Carney and his friends. And that's what this guy has been about his entire career, whether as the bank of the governor of Canada, or whether as the banker of the governor of England. It's always been grifting. It's always been about moving private sector money over to him as a public sector engagement actor. And if Canadians aren't outraged about this, they might as well be dead. I'm sorry, but it's that simple.
Could your health issues be caused by an invisible enemy, fatigue, bloating, brain fog? What if parasites are actually the real culprit? I know it sounds gross, but I was digging into parasite cleanses when I came across this video from this doctor. Watch.
What are the main differences between ivermectin and fenbendazole? These are two anti-pathogens used to treat parasitic infections and other similar types of conditions. They are used quite often in the oncology world to treat cancer. They both have as anti-pathogenic abilities.
Interesting, right? Did you know that 50% of Americans have parasites? They're everywhere in our food, our water, our pets. They secretly invade your body, wreaking havoc on your gut, energy levels, even your brain. And the mainstream medical system, they don't want you thinking about this because one great cleanse can actually change your life. The Wellness Company has a solution for you. Ivermectin plus mebendazole, a Nobel Prize winner now in a parasite cleanse combo that wipes out these invaders. Just fill out a brief medical intake form to get your 3-month supply. Lots of parasite cleanses are all over social media, but not the gold standard level from the Wellness Company. Maha is officially here, and the Wellness Company is making these hard-to-get medications digitally accessible so you can live your best life. So head over to twc.health/redacted and use the code redacted to save $60 off plus free shipping. Don't wait. Cleanse your body and take back control today. So these companies, what do we know about them? From what I understand from the ethics commissioner, that there are 2 environmental companies that he also has assets in and an advisory firm. So he's, of course, been pushing this big environmental push, green energy technology. So environmental companies. So, of course, this is going to benefit him, right? I mean, how can it not?
There are dozens, not just 2 or 3, dozens of green energy companies in this portfolio. Dozens. And of course, number 1 and number 2 are Brookfield Asset Management, where he was the chairman. And I have to laugh at the reporting from CBC and these other state media. They said he was an employee of Brookfield Asset Management. He was the chairman. He was the guy that moved the headquarters from Ottawa to New York City just before he left. That's chairman, because he had to.
It's like mostly peaceful protests. Mostly peaceful protests. You know, he was just an employee. Yeah. He was the chairman. Okay, yeah. So if he's going to be making these decisions, and we know that he probably will be, and then if he's not going to self-regulate himself out of this, then a lot of these companies, you know, he's going to be standing to make millions of dollars off of these moves, whether it's in green energy, whether it's in housing, whether it's in finance. With hundreds of companies under his belt, he's going to stand to make millions of dollars off of this.
Well, that's precisely it, Clayton. And, you know, he said he's put all of this into a blind trust, quote unquote. What does that mean? What is a blind trust? Well, according to Mark Carney, it means giving your friends and your closest associates access to your finances. It's not a blind trust. And I have to, you know, I rarely ever think Pierre Poilievre hits back hard enough. And of course, the Conservative Party candidate leader, who's right now running in a by-election in Alberta to save his political skin. But Pierre Poilievre suggested the other day that maybe Mark Carney should sell off all of the assets and put them in a truly blind trust, meaning somebody he doesn't know and doesn't have breakfast with every day and doesn't have drinks with on the weekends. That would be a truly blind trust. But right now, it's not a blind trust. And what infuriates me most about this, Clayton, is not just the fact that he thinks he can get away with this. Mark Carney thinks Canadians, once again, are that stupid. Maybe they are, because they elected this guy as prime minister without even asking, how much money do you owe and who do you owe it with? But he thinks he can get away with this. And the ethics commissioner, so-called ethics commissioner in Ottawa, thinks this is good advice, that you can self-regulate with that kind of conflicts of interest. This is unprecedented in Canadian history. We have never had a prime minister with this much overlapping fiscal, incredible control. And it's going to be nothing but disaster if he's allowed to continue in office. This is going to be the most profit-driven prime minister in the history of Canada. And if you think that somehow Mark Carney is above all of this, He never has been. He has made perhaps hundreds of millions of dollars. We don't even know what the man's worth because he didn't have to say that, just where he's making his money. But he's made his money over the years as a corporatist through this corporate welfare that the left has continued to sell as somehow being free enterprise. And it's not capitalism to any extent of the rule. It's not free enterprise. It's corporate cronyism. And that's what Mark Carney is emblematic of. That's what he's the very embodiment of corporate cronyism. And if we are headed for very, very difficult times with this man.
I'll get you out of here on this, David. Mark Carney yesterday saying that he doesn't think that Canada will be able to avoid these tariffs with the United States. Where do things stand with all of that? And what would the avoidance look like if Carney was able to avoid these tariffs? What is this going to look like for Canadians?
Well, clearly, Mark Carney is desperate for a crisis. And this is what makes this all the more disturbing, is that on the same week that he had to announce his fiscal irresponsibility, he also had to deal with Donald Trump coming by and saying 35% tariffs by August 1st. Now, Mark Carney said he was on vacation at the time, and we're not sure exactly where he was. He was in Australia, apparently, for some part of that vacation. And there are a lot of people out there, and I'm interviewing somebody later today who says he was at the Bohemian Grove during his vacation. But Mark Carney called an emergency meeting of the cabinet and the premiers, like the governors in the U.S. Not tomorrow, not the next day, but 10 days later. It's going to be next Monday before these guys finally get together for this emergency meeting. Is the tariff going to be catastrophic for Canada? Of course it will be. But Mark Carney's not about worrying about catastrophic occurrences for the country. He's worried about catastrophe for Mark Carney and what could possibly bring him down as the prime minister. So he's using the tariff crisis again, just like he did during the election campaign, to demonize Donald Trump, demonize the U.S. as the enemy of Canada, and Mark Carney as the defender of Canada Strong. He's using this so we won't look at the financial irresponsibility of this man, of a man with 103 corporations under his belt trying to be prime minister. That's the game plan for Mark Carney. It's all about distraction. It's sleight of hand. He's a magician. I've called him that several times in my Substack columns and other things I've written. He's a magician. When you're looking at his left hand, you don't see what the right hand is doing. And that's what Mark Carney's all about.
David Creighton writes at the Post Millennial, has a great YouTube channel as well. Follow him on X. Great to see you, David. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Clayton. Always a pleasure to be here.